So Georgi Markov is working at the Paleontology and Mineralogy Department in the National Museum of Natural History of Bulgaria Academy of Science in Sofia, Bulgaria. His main subject is fossil proboscideans, but he's written several papers on chess variants that have been published in the Board Game Studies Journal. And he's also been a participant in 3 Board Game Studies colloquia in Paris, Leeuwarden, and at Ephesus. And so he's going to tell us some more about some interesting chess variants. So take it away, Georgi.
Thank you, Walter. Good evening, everyone, and also thank you from me to Ivan and Matthias for the really interesting presentation. I hope mine will be a little bit more understandable for people like me who have no technical education. Anyway, this book, written in the GDR and published in the GDR, was bought to me by my dad back in 1988, and this is where my interest in chess variants actually started. It had the rules for Japanese and Chinese chess, which was fine because these were games that are rather well known, with rules which are really clear and universally known. Much later, of course, than 1988, I managed to get some idea of how to play those games online, also get sets later, etc. But one of the variants there, Russian Fortress Chess, a 400 game, was a less clear case. Rules in Makachek's book were incomplete, and as it turned out, some of them were actually wrong, and so was some of the information in that book. Years later, again, I managed to find the original description of the game in an 1850 volume of Schachzeitung, which almost set the record straight, but there are still 1 or 2 minor details of the rules which are not clear. So in order to be able to play the game, I had to come up with a suggestion of my own. And this was in fact my first paper for the Board Game Studies Journal. I think this is what you could call a minor meddling, because it was really just some very few details about pawn promotion or stalemate rules and so on. Similarly, with 2 games from 19th century Germany, Kaiserspiel and Sultanspiel, some errors had accumulated in the literature regarding the rules. Finding the original 19th century descriptions was okay, but again, there were either minor details which were not entirely clear, or which could probably be a little bit modernized without any great loss to the games. For example, again, pawn promotion, which in the original games was a little bit, it was following the then German rules of pawn promotion, which are different from the current ones. And also in Sultanspiel there was an extra way of winning by getting your king to a specific square on the board, and I felt that this option could be simply dropped without much happening. I took some more liberties in another, no, I think it was in the same actually, paper for the Board Game Studies Journal with Hyderabad Decimal Chess. This name in fact was introduced by Jean-Louis Cazot, Rick Knowlton in their A World of Chess for a game discussed in Murray's 1913 volume, Classic on Chess Variants. There was no official name there in Murray. I think the one that Jean-Louis and Rick suggested was really good. Also, they had some very good ideas about the rules, which as usual were incomplete in Murray. I basically followed them, just suggested some additional minor things regarding, since it is an Indian game, the Indian rules of pawn promotion and so on. But since there is no such thing as uniform Indian rules, I was choosing between several variants and was always going for the simpler option, which almost certainly resulted in a game deviating from the original one. So this was in fact a bit of more meddling than in the previous cases. Similarly, when we were working with Stefan Hertel from Berlin, trying to reconstruct the rules of Turkish Great Chess, a game which was described in the early 19th century, but was probably around at least from the end of the 18th, because the author said that his father was very good in it. By the way, here you could see what you could find about that game on chessvariance.com. The diagram on the right is taken from there. If you compare it to ours, there are a few differences. Apart from the setup, we managed to follow the entire process, during which within 100 or nearly actually 200 of years, so many errors accumulated in the literature by misquotings, misinterpretations, openly fantasizing about the game and so on, that in the end of that process 200 years later, the game that you can see on the right was very different from what we think was the original one. And actually it was precisely because trying to play it by these rules that I suspected that something must be wrong. I had no idea how wrong it was, in fact. But in any case, when we were going for reconstructing it, because again the rules were incomplete in the original book, we took some liberties again, tried to introduce some rules which maybe weren't in the original game, and also on top of it, at some point we made a reformed version in which we replaced the super queen with a more restricted version of it, which only went one square diagonally, but continued going around all the orthogonals and kept the knight move. Because in our opinion back then, the super queen was probably a little bit too strong piece, which probably wasn't the case after all. Judging from a Swedish game, the so-called Gustav III chess, which even has 2 super queens per side and on a smaller board, but nevertheless is really playable. So maybe we meddled a bit too much here. Anyway, after you have done this, you start meddling more. This is a version that my wife and I suggested in 2022. It is a reformed version of the Duke of Rutland's chess, which in our opinion the original was simply not interesting enough. What in fact we came up with almost the same and very close to Charles Gilman's Modern Manners, but in our version the kings are crosswise, which is a feature of a number of Asian variants which I am particularly fond of. And we introduced 2 pieces next to the king and queen, the shot and the yabgu, which is a crowned knight and the rook, and the crowned bishop and the rook. They are powerful pieces. In fact, this is the same one that we used in the reformed Turkish Great Chess. They are powerful, but still not as powerful as the super queen. Of course, neither of those 2 pieces is really original. They have been used by other people in their altered variants in the years before. but they seem to work really well on larger boards. Of course, on a usual 8x8 board, it would get too crowded, but here we felt this kind of board gave them the opportunity to show their best. There are some examples from our presentation with Tanya for the 2021 Board Game Studies Colloquium in Paris, which was unfortunately not really in Paris but online. You all remember how it was in 21. Nevertheless, it was a very pleasant occasion. Here or there, we presented some ideas about hybridizing different games. Here are only a few examples of them. On the left you can see Turkish Great Chess Kirki and circular Janus chess on the right, or Janus chess. Turkish Great Chess Kirki obviously uses George Deco Sr.'s chess Kirki and makes it big enough to incorporate the pieces of Turkish Great Chess. And the other one mixes two, I think, rather well-known variants. The modern circular chess of David Reynolds and Janus chess, Janus Schach or super chess back then, which was invented in the 70s, I think, by Werner Schondorf. And obviously I couldn't resist combining two of the games that I really liked, which is Russian Fortress Chess and Turkish Great Chess. And since Russian Turkish Fortress Great would sound too stupid, we just decided to call it Imperial Fortress Chess. So here it is. Sometimes, however, it happens that hybridization, as in nature, can occur unintentionally and with surprisingly good results. This is the curious case of George Hope Verney's so-called game by Alfonso X. Of course, it has nothing to do with Grand Passedres, as was pointed out by David Pritchard a long time ago. After a series of mistakes, Verney, who really believed he was basing his information on a book by Antonius van der Linde, misinterpreted several of the things in van der Linde's book, and as a result came up with something which is in fact a 12 by 12 version of Aubers's modern courier chess from the 19th century, which is a really expanded version of the original middle-aged one. And you wouldn't expect that something which is a result of such a comedy of errors would be such a good game, but in fact it is. It is one of the really nice and playable variants that I have seen, with a nice balanced setup, and the result of just a series of mistakes. So, of course, you get to next levels of meddling when you start inventing your own chess variants, as if there weren't thousands of them already enough. But it's hard sometimes, as in that case, to see a good idea and not steal it. As I said, I really like the idea of fortresses in the Russian four-handed chess, so took it for two possible variants for two people, for two-handed variants. The only thing that is better with the one on the right is that it is more compact, but this one is closer to the original. And I've also played several games of each of them with innocent victims, mostly my family, and I think it's quite you know, not really extremely novel variant, but certainly gives you some opportunities for unexpected tactics. Here are also some games on larger boards I have been toying with. They are just something I have been wasting my spare time on. 16 by 16, by the way, I believe is the maximum. After that, it is just too big, just for the sake of being big. But 16 by 16 still gives you the opportunity to put some interesting pieces without making it too crowded. And you can always use a Halma board if you have a Halma board to play it, if you pay no attention to the lines in the corners. So, since for me at least the main reason to try and figure out the rules of historical and traditional chess variants have been to play them in the first place. You inevitably come to the do-it-yourself moment. Here is a board for Russian Fortress chess, not too successful one. It was really huge and I had no idea. Now I have a better idea how I should put the self-adhesive tape on top. But then I didn't, so you can see all the air which got inside and which still gets inside with the time, but it is still playable. And also using very cheap Chinese pieces and a little bit of paint, you can have the 4 necessary colors, white, black, red and blue, without going to too much trouble. Here is a board for Turkish Great Chess. This one is on vinyl, so I had no problem with air. And again, the same kind of pieces, plus 2 pawns from another set, 2 poses gazelles. I have played quite a number of games of Turkish Great Chess with a colleague of mine here at the museum, not with this set, but with even more basic equipment than that. A really cheap chess board with adhesive, self-adhesive tape glued on it for the 13 by 13 pattern, and all those pieces which are here painted with just a little bit of red thread or cotton or whatever on top of them. Still works. We have also played Hyderabad decimal chess on. Fortunately, I found here in Sofia cardboard boards for international drafts, which I was pleasantly surprised because this is not a game really known or played here, but the board was very good for this and obviously any decimal variant you could wish to play. And coming full circle in a way, another four-handed chess variant which is mentioned in Heinz Machacek's book, which was at the beginning of this presentation, is Aristotle Lutz's Vierschach. Here you can see using a normal 14 by 14 board as a substitute for a cross-shaped board for four-handed chess. Now there is the thing with Lutz's chess. Not quite surprisingly, the rules for this game in Machacek's book are again incomplete and also full of errors. Last year I managed to find the original description in Alban von Hahn's Buch der Spiele from the 1890s, which was surprising. I don't think many people know that if you ever see that game mentioned, usually the first source is Lutz's book from about 1905. I don't think many people know that in fact the rules were published by him at least 10 years earlier than that, in the Book der Spiele compendium. Now the problem with that game is this: the rules from the 19th century source do make a lot of sense, except maybe for one rule about stalemate, which if I understand it correctly, is a little bit too eccentric. But what you can see on the right is what's the name? A problem from the 1905 book, which I haven't seen. I have seen only this problem from it, and as far as I can see, the only way that it can be solved is in a little bit of contradiction with the 1890s rules. In fact, in order to solve it, as far as I can see, you should move the white king, the sole remaining white king, into check, and rely on the fact that the black king B is mated before actually the check can come into effect. However, this I think contradicts to what I have written in the Book der Spiele. So if anyone by any chance has an access to this book, I would be really curious to know at least the solution, the author's solution to this problem, because it must be provided somewhere in the book. And if possible, whatever the rules in the later book are regarding stalemate and checkmate. So if you suddenly bump into this book, please don't kick it or throw it away, just try to figure out those two things and let me know. And finally, there is an entirely different aspect of meddling with chess variants I would like to talk about. And it is this: well, many chess variants, including the ones that we were dealing with until now, are rather different from Ortu chess, the usual international official, if you prefer, rules of the game. There are many which are played on a 8x8 board and with pieces which move like or almost like the ones in the international game. And they are in a precarious position precisely because of this similarity, because this makes them very vulnerable to the pressure of auto chess. Their players can move to the international game for a number of reasons, like thinking that this is the proper way to play, or getting on an international stage, or being able to play with obviously a much broader community of people than if sticking to their own variants. And precisely because of this, several traditional variants of this kind have already disappeared in the 20th century. Some of them were destroyed by the Soviet Union, again with the very good intentions of teaching people to play properly. Mongolian chess almost barely made it, and made it better in Inner Mongolia, because Chinese chess is different enough to be a threat. And some, even though they're still around, are in the process of disappearing. And Maldivian chess that you see on this photo by Alex de Vocht, while it is played and it is extant, but the only description by a native author that I have seen said in the end that less and less people are playing it and more are turning to the international rules. And I believe that not letting those traditional variants die out and writing down their rules and playing them, and basically understanding that they are a real, genuine part of a cultural heritage and tradition, and not just some obsolete or flawed variant of the real game, so to say, would be a good idea. And this also brings us of course, to a number of other topics such as what, if anything, one expects to gain from playing in the broadest possible terms. I mean, gaining like pleasure or brain development or whatever. Also, when exactly do you stop playing for fun, even if wagers are involved? They are not mutually exclusive. Whatever, exclusive, I think. And start in fact playing for living. In other words, when does a game become an organized sport or event? What happens to the social aspects of a game in that process when you are no longer playing with your family surroundings or friends, etc., but are starting to play with people you have maybe never even met online and so on and so on. But topics like this usually tend to take entire volumes or conferences, and certainly not a presentation like this one. So I would just like to say again that the photo above is by Alex Defort. Most diagrams were made with a really nice and very useful tool by Musketeer Chess. And finally, unfortunately, I used this very same last slide on my presentation in Leeuwarden 2 years ago, 2 years and a half. It was made by my wife. And I find it extremely regrettable that it is still as relevant as it used to be back then with the Ukrainian colors. Thank you for your attention.